Well, hello again, guys. Here's Christian Bassar again with another episode of History Vice video blog. Well, okay, so about 2 months ago, I created and uploaded a video about the power of ideas, and to illustrate that idea, I used the example of the Russian old believers in the Orthodox Church. So I'm going to post, or I'm going to attach a link to that video inside this one. So you can go have a look at it if you haven't seen it yet. But now I want to talk about why ideas are so powerful, and that's an interesting question because it's easy to understand that ideas are powerful, but why is that so? I'm sure that other historians and lots of philosophers and people have thought about this, written about this over the centuries. I'm certainly not the first one, I'm sure. And, and this little YouTube video could hardly do this big idea justice. I know we won't be able to answer this question definitively. But I do have a possible idea of why this is so, and I want to share it with you guys. Ideas are powerful because they work. Ideas are powerful because they work. So, because when you think about it, an idea is simply an explanation of how the world works, how it operates. And an idea can be looked at and somebody could say, oh, well, the world doesn't work that way, so I'll reject that idea. And then then other people will be like, oh yeah, that's right, I'll accept that idea, and people act on it. So, and this is why two people can look at the same thing and come up with two totally different conclusions and take totally different paths. Well, for example, let us consider the idea of whether or not there is a God. So we have two people. One's named Joe, the other's name is Ashley. And these are two made-up people. I'm not using real people in this example, so just so you know that. And so, okay, let's look at Joe first. He will gather his evidence by looking at the natural world, and he'll look at history. After looking at the evidence and everything, Joe ultimately believes that there is no God. There's no God. So he decides this because he cannot see a higher being in action in the natural world. And also throughout history, he acknowledges that many good things have been done. But he also sees that there's a lot of evil that was done, and he does not see this some kind of benevolent God come down and prevent that evil situation from happening. And even worse, he sees many good, pious people, so to speak, perform a lot of evil action in the name of religion. So to him, atheism makes sense. If there was a true God, this stuff wouldn't have happened, and God is not making himself known. So atheism fits Joe's mindset. But on the other hand, we take a look at Ashley. She looks at the same evidence, the same world, and the same history. She comes with a totally different conclusion. She does believe that there is a God. There is a God. And she sees nature's complexity. And she believes, or she senses, that there must be some kind of a design behind it. She asks, how could this come out of chance? Even if a Big Bang was used to create it, there had to have been somebody behind it because this world is so complex. And it fits together just absolutely perfectly. She may believe that. And if she's a Christian, she believes that nature shows God's, invisible qualities and divine attributes and divine nature. So, and down there at the bottom, I listed Romans 1:20, and that's the verse that kind of explains why she thinks nature shows God to us. And that first chapter of Romans will also tell her that people have chosen to ignore God, bringing sin and evil into the world. So that explains why there can be a good God, but also lots of evil in the world. So that makes sense to her. And Ashley, like Joe, acknowledges that many evil things have been done. But if she's Christian, she believes in the idea of hell and eternal judgment. So then that problem of evil is fixed in a way because there's a sense of justice and morality, even if it's not here on this earth. It's there in the divine sense. So Christianity has successfully explained the world to her, and therefore it makes sense and it fits what she observes. And she acts on that belief. And so we see similar things with communism. Communism made sense to many people because it explained their situations. Let's take the example of Vietnamese communists during French rule. The French, they were fairly oppressive. They replaced Vietnamese institutions with French ones, and they created a situation in which a French janitor at a university got paid more than a French-educated Vietnamese professor. So, there's obviously an injustice there. And the poor went hungry, and Richard Allen called hunger the eternal seedbed of communism. So, and communism promised peasant emancipation from the upper classes, and food and equality for all. So, messages like this were attractive to poor Vietnamese under the yoke of rich foreign French oppressors. And also, Lenin's idea of imperialism seemed to explain or define the French, and the French with their oppression and their social inequality that they imposed or that they set upon Vietnam. And the idea of imperialism seemed to fit what the French were doing. So communism made sense. But communism didn't work for everybody. Immediately after the communist revolution in Russia, there were the Siberians and those of the Russian Far East. So there was a different situation there. Communism did not make sense. This is because the region was isolated, and lines of communication were poor, and propaganda wouldn't spread so fast and everything, of course. So that's one thing. But perhaps even more importantly, communism fell on deaf ears in the East because the proletariat was very independent, and actually this is a very common trait among frontiers people. But the proletariat were not only independent, but they were also quite wealthy. So, and the East was also full of anti-communists, like monarchists, Cossacks, and other people. So though they were eventually brought under the heel of communism, they didn't want to rush into communism's arms for salvation right away. They had no need to. There were no landowners to overthrow, and since they were well off, there was no need for the communist ideas of, equality and getting rid of the rich oppressors.